On Christmas Eve, my son kicked me out because I refused to hand over my business to him. The next day, he received an unexpected gift, a process server at his door. At that moment, he turned pale as a ghost, and I finally found my peace. It was December 24th, when my own flesh and blood threw me out on the street like trash. 11 at night. The house all decorated. Christmas lights twinkling in the windows. The smell of roast ham still lingering in the air. And there I was, at 68 years old, being pushed out by the man I had raised alone after his mother passed away. My name is Hubert, and this is the story of how my son David tried to steal everything I had built, and how I made him pay dearly for it. But before I tell you what happened that cursed night, promise me one thing. Stay with me until the end, because what follows will break your heart, but it will also show you that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. If you've ever felt disrespected by those who should love you, this story is for you. And if you've enjoyed it so far, subscribe to Revenge with Thomas channel so you don't miss upcoming stories, because many people need to know they're not alone in this fight. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Let's go back to that evening. I had arrived at David's house around 7 p.m. I brought gifts for my grandchildren, Lucas, 10, and Emma, 7, a blue scooter for the boy that he'd been asking for months, and a 4-story dollhouse for the little girl with lights and everything. I spent $2,500 in total. But it was Christmas. It was family. When I entered, Sarah, my daughter-in-law, barely looked at me. She just gave a curt nod and went back to the kitchen. David was in the living room, phone in hand, brow furrowed. He didn't even stand up to greet me properly. The kids at least welcomed me with hugs. Lucas hung around my neck. Emma showed me her new dress her mother had bought her. I smiled, but my heart was already tight. I knew this atmosphere. It was the calm before the storm. Dinner was cold, not the food, which was hot and actually well prepared, but the atmosphere at the table was heavy as lead. Sarah chewed slowly, eyes fixed on her plate. David barely touched his meal. He looked at me strangely, like I was an intruder. After the children opened their gifts and went to play in their room, he called me, "Dad, come here to my office. I need to talk to you." My stomach froze, but I went. The office was at the back of the house, a small room with a dark wooden desk and shelves full of files, smelling of old paper and printer ink. Sarah came in right behind me and closed the door. David pulled up a chair and sat down in front of the desk. He didn't offer me a seat. I remained standing, clutching my bag to my chest. He opened a drawer and took out papers which he placed on the desk right in front of me. "You need to sign this today." I leaned over to read. They were property transfer documents for my bakery. Silver loaf. 35 years of work, all passing to his name. My blood boiled. "David, what is this?" "It's the business transfer. Dad, I've already talked to the accountant. Everything's in order. You just need to sign." "But why would I do that?" He sighed as if I was stupid. "Because you've worked enough. It's time to rest. And I'm your son. Who else would take care of the business?" I laughed. It wasn't funny at all, but I laughed nervously out of indignation. "David, have you lost your mind? I'm not signing this." Sarah stepped forward. "Hubert, don't be stubborn. David is doing you a favor. You're elderly now. What if something happens to you? The bakery will be abandoned. Better to transfer it to him now." "Elderly. She called me elderly, like I was an old piece of furniture forgotten in a corner. I looked at these two, my son and his wife, and I saw something in their eyes that made me shiver. Greed. They weren't concerned about me. They wanted to get their hands on the money. No, I said firmly. I won't sign. Silver Loaf is mine. I built it alone, stone by stone. Nobody's taking that from me. David's face hardened. Dad, don't make me do this the hard way. What hard way? I asked, feeling fear creep up my spine. He stood up, tall, broad-shouldered, staring at me like I was an enemy. If you don't sign, you'll have to leave. I blinked. I thought I'd misheard. What you heard me. This house is mine, and if you don't want to cooperate, then you no longer have a place here. My heart raced. I looked at Sarah. She had her arms crossed, a little smile at the corner of her mouth. David, are you serious? Very serious. Sign the papers or get out. Choose. I was paralyzed. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was my son, my only son, the boy I had raised, clothed, fed, sent to school, paid for his education, bought his first car, helped with his wedding, and he was kicking me out on Christmas Eve. No, I said, my voice shaking. I won't sign. David threw the papers on the desk. Then get out of here. He came towards me, grabbed me by the arm, and dragged me into the hallway. Sarah followed us, shouting, Go away, you selfish old man. You only think of yourself. You never thought about your son. I tried to break free, but he was too strong. He pulled me to the front door. The children appeared in the hallway, frightened. Grandpa, shouted Lucas. Shut up. Sarah yelled at him. Emma started crying. David opened the door. The cold night wind hit my face. He pushed me outside. I almost fell on the sidewalk. And don't come back until you've changed your mind, he said, before slamming the door. I stood there alone in the middle of the street with an old suitcase in my hand and my bag of documents hanging from my shoulder. Christmas lights were twinkling in neighboring houses, the distant sound of laughter and music, and me expelled, humiliated, broken. But I didn't cry. Not at that moment. Because deep in my chest with the pain, something new was being born. Anger, determination, and the absolute certainty that my son would bitterly regret what he had just done. Because he didn't know it, but I had prepared for this, and what would follow would make him lose his footing. But before I tell you what I did that night, you need to understand one thing. I'm not a man who gives up easily. Silver Loaf didn't fall from the sky. This bakery wasn't a gift or an inheritance, but sweat, blood, and tears. And if there's one thing I've learned in 68 years of life, it's that nobody has the right to take what we've built with our own hands. Let me take you back 35 years to the day it all began. 1990. I was 33 and had just buried my wife Elizabeth. My dear Elizabeth died suddenly, leaving me alone with David, who was only 8 at the time, with nothing, worse than nothing, with debts, $25,000. Sounds small today, right, but back then it was a fortune, a loan she had taken out to try to start a business that never got off the ground. Hospital bills, funeral, everything fell on my shoulders. I remember that night when I sat at the kitchen table alone with the bills spread out before me. The empty house, David asleep in his room, and me, not knowing how I would pay next month's rent. I cried. I cried until I had no more tears. But when the sun rose, I had already made a decision. I wasn't going to sink. I wasn't going to let my son go hungry. I wasn't going to let life crush me. I went to my sister Anne. She lived in a small apartment in Chicago, but she had a huge heart. I explained the situation. I borrowed $4,000 from her. She looked me in the eye and said, "Hubert, you'll make it. I have faith in you." With that money, I bought my first stock: flour, yeast, molds, simple things, but which people needed. Every Sunday, I went to the farmer's market in Milwaukee, set up a small stand with a green tarp, one of those that trembles in the wind. I stayed there from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., burning sun on my head, swollen feet, hands cracked from handling flour and dough. But I sold. At first, it was slow, $25 or $35 a day. But I gained customers. People liked my bread because I chatted, gave advice on what to serve with it, helped them choose the best loaves. I became known. And David, he came with me, so small, sitting on a wooden box next to the stall, drawing in an old notebook. Sometimes he helped me wrap the bread or held the umbrella when the sun was strong. That boy was my reason for getting up every day. We'd return home in the evening exhausted. I cooked something quick: rice, pasta, an omelet, and we ate watching TV. Then I gave him his bath, put him to bed, and stayed up until early morning doing accounts, planning what to buy the following week. There was no money left for anything else. New clothes, only if they came from a thrift store. Outings, impossible. I wore the same worn-out shoes for 2 years because I couldn't afford to buy others. But I didn't complain because I had a goal, and every penny that came in went directly into the business or to David. He always had the best I could offer him: private school, even if I had to schedule monthly payments, new uniform every year, complete school supplies. He never had to be ashamed in front of his classmates. And when he was 16, I had saved enough to rent a commercial space. 1995, my first bakery, a small space in downtown Milwaukee, about 500 square feet. But it was mine. Silver loaf. I named it that because it was bread and it was silver, like the future I wanted for us. I painted the walls blue and white, cheerful colors. I installed wooden shelves that I had sanded and varnished myself. I filled it with products: baguettes, specialty breads, pastries, all of it. The day of the grand opening, Anne came with me, brought a cake. We celebrated just the two of us and David, but it was the happiest day of my life until then. I worked from 4 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week without rest, without vacations. Christmas, busy period. I couldn't rest. When David came home from school, he came straight to the bakery, did his homework at the counter while I served customers. Sometimes he complained, "Dad, why don't we go to the movies? Why don't we travel?" And I always answered the same thing: "Son, we're building our future. One day you'll understand." He grew up there between the bags of flour and rolling pins. He learned to answer the phone, to wrap the breads, to keep accounts. And I built an empire slowly, but I built it. The bakery grew. In 2002, I managed to rent the space next door and double the size. In 2007, I bought the premises. $300,000 in cash, money that I had saved penny by penny over the years. In 2012, I renovated everything: air conditioning, new shelves, modern ovens, automated management system. Silver Loaf became a reference in the area. Customers came from far away. We did deliveries, signed contracts with companies. When I assessed the assets in 2024, the bakery was worth $1,100,000, over $1 million. And do you know what I did with all that money over the years I invested in David? I paid for private school until he finished high school, business studies at a good university, $2,500 a month for 4 years. I bought him a car when he turned 18, a used Ford, but in good condition. I paid for his driver's license, gave him pocket money. When he wanted to marry Sarah, I paid for the entire wedding, catering, decoration, dress, everything, $60,000. I didn't ask for a cent in return. I put down the down payment for the apartment where they lived before buying the house. I helped with furniture, with household linens, with everything. I never refused my son anything. And what did I get in return? A push outside on Christmas Eve. As I walked alone in the cold streets that night, carrying my old suitcase, I thought about all this, about every sacrifice, every choice I had made thinking of him. And you know what hurt the most? It wasn't that he had kicked me out. It was that he thought I was stupid, that I wouldn't react, that I would simply accept and give him everything on a silver platter. Because there's one thing my son forgot. Someone who builds an empire from nothing isn't weak, isn't foolish, isn't naive. And I had learned during those 35 years dealing with dishonest suppliers, bad-paying customers, and unfair competitors to protect myself. So while I was looking for a cheap hotel to spend that cursed night, I already knew exactly what to do. And the next morning, my son would discover that he had messed with the wrong man. But for you to truly understand how I got to this hell, I need to tell you about her, Sarah, the woman who entered my family like a lamb and revealed herself to be a venomous snake. It was in 2011 that David met her. He was 29, working as a manager in a hardware store, earning a reasonably good living. He was still living with me, but already talking about leaving, having his own life. I even encouraged it. I found it natural. Children grow up, want to fly with their own wings. That's how it is. Until one Sunday, he arrived home with her. Sarah was 24, beautiful. I can't deny it. Long blonde hair, blue eyes, wide smile, slim, tall, well-dressed. She wore a red dress that hugged her body, high-heeled sandals, manicured nails. She was very friendly, hugged me, complimented the house, said that David talked a lot about me. Mr. Hubert, what a pleasure to meet you. David only says good things about you. You know, he says you're a warrior, an inspiration. I smiled. I was even flattered. I thought, what a well-raised girl. I prepared lunch for them, steak roast, because David loved it. Sarah ate little, said she was on a diet, but thanked me a lot. She stayed to help me do the dishes, chatting, asking me questions about the bakery. I told her a bit of the story of how I had started at the market, of the sacrifice, of the struggle. She listened, eyes wide. What an incredible story. You're a winner. I admire that a lot. At the time, I believed her. After that day, she began to frequent the house. She always came with David, brought gifts, nothing expensive, but she brought them a pie, some fruit, candy, always friendly, attentive. About 4 months later, David called me to talk. Dad, I'm in love with Sarah. I want to marry her. My heart tightened, not because I didn't like her. Like, so far she'd only been kind, but I knew my son. He was impulsive, fell in love quickly, and marriage isn't a game. Son, you've known each other for such a short time. I know, Dad, but I'm sure she's the woman of my life. He was determined, and I wasn't going to be the annoying father who hinders his son's happiness. So, I gave my blessing. The engagement lasted a year. During this period, I got to know her family. Sarah's mother, Mrs. Linda, was a hairdresser. The father, Mr. George, worked as a building maintenance man. Simple, modest, hardworking people. They lived in a small house in Detroit. 4 cramped rooms, tin roof. There was nothing wrong with that. I, too, came from a modest background. I respected those who worked honestly. But I noticed one thing. Sarah was ashamed of her origins. When we went to visit her parents, she was tense, rushed the visit, found any excuse to leave quickly, and then in the car, she complained, "Oh, David, my mother is so old-fashioned. She offers that stale coffee, those outdated snacks." It bothered me, but I said nothing. I thought it was just a young girl wanting to appear more sophisticated than she was. The wedding was set for June 2012, and that's when the first problem appeared. They had no money. David had about $18,000 in savings. Sarah's family couldn't contribute anything, and she wanted a big wedding, fancy venue, full buffet, magazine-worthy decoration. David, I've always dreamed of a beautiful wedding. I'll only get married once in my life. I saw my son anxious. He wanted to make her dream come true, but didn't have the means. That's when I stepped in. "Son, let me help you. I'll pay for the wedding." "Dad, that's not necessary." "Yes, it is. You're my only son. I want to see you happy." And I paid $60,000. A venue that could accommodate 250 people. Full buffet with 4 types of meat. Cocktail bar. Live band. Decoration entirely in silver and blue that Sarah chose. Her dress alone cost $7,000. The day of the wedding, she was radiant, looked like a queen. And David, he looked at her as if he'd found a treasure. I was happy for him truly. But deep, deep down, there was a moment in that celebration that left me with a chill in my stomach. It was when I was sitting at a table, resting my feet, which hurt from standing. Sarah passed near me talking to a friend. They didn't see me, and I heard the friend say, "Sarah, you've done it. You found a man with money, with a rich father. Now you just have to enjoy it." And Sarah laughed. That sharp, high-pitched laugh. Yes, after so many hardships, I'm finally going to have a good life. My stomach turned, but I tried to ignore it. I thought it was a joke, some nonsense between jealous friends. What a fool I was. After the wedding, they went to live in a rented apartment. I put down the deposit, bought the basic furniture. Sarah wanted everything new, the best. I helped as much as I could. And that's when she started working at the bakery. She said she wanted to help, that she had studied some administration in a vocational course, that she could be useful. I accepted. I hired her as an office manager, paying her $4,000 a month. At first, she worked well, organized papers, received suppliers, controlled stocks. I thought I had made a good choice, but little by little, I began to notice changes. She talked to David, put ideas in his head. "Honey, your father is too controlling. He doesn't let you decide anything in the bakery. David, your father is getting old. He's not keeping up with the market. His strategies are outdated. You should have more say in the company. After all, you're his son. You'll inherit everything one day." And David began to change. He became more distant with me, colder, He began to question my decisions in the bakery, something he had never done before. Dad, why don't you invest in online ads, Dad? You should update the inventory system. Dad, you're losing customers because you don't take mobile payments. I even agreed with some things. I made changes. I hired a digital marketing firm. I set up a payment app. I revamped the website, but it wasn't enough for him, or rather for her, because everything David said I knew came first from Sarah's mouth. One day, about 3 years after the wedding, I arrived at the bakery by surprise. It was a Friday morning, very early. I had forgotten a document at home and had come back to get it. When I pushed the door, I saw Sarah on the phone. She had her back to me, didn't see me enter, and I heard her say, "No. You can send the invoice directly to my email. Mr. Hubert doesn't need to know that now. We'll deal with him later." My blood boiled. What kind of story was this? I approached. "Sarah, who are you talking to?" She jumped, quickly hung up. Her face turned red. "Oh, Mr. Hubert, you scared me. It was just a supplier. Nothing important. Which supplier, and why don't you want me to know?" "It's not that. Mr. Hubert, you misunderstood. I was just organizing things to make your job easier." I didn't believe her, but I had no way to prove anything. I let it go, but it was the first clear sign that she was planning something. And in the months that followed, things only got worse. Suppliers began to delay deliveries. Old customers disappeared. Small problems that had never happened before began to appear. And always, Sarah was involved. That's when I really began to be wary, and that's when I began silently to protect myself. There's one thing I learned during all those years working with the public. You can sense when someone is plotting behind your back. It's a sixth sense, a shiver, a detail that doesn't add up. And with Sarah, these details began to accumulate like dust under the rug. It was in 2014. She had been working at Silver Loaf for 3 years, and the bakery, which had always been my pride, began to show strange signs. First, it was the suppliers. Midwest Flour, which had served me for 18 years, suddenly began to delay deliveries. The merchandise that always arrived on Tuesday no longer arrived until Saturday. When I called to complain, Mr. Harlan, the owner, was embarrassed. "Mr. Hubert, really sorry. We had a problem with the schedule. I found it strange, but I let it go until it happened again and again." The 4th time I went to see them in person, "Mr. Harlan, what's going on? Our relationship has always been good. Why these failures now?" He scratched his head, embarrassed. "Listen, Mr. Hubert, it's that we've received calls from your bakery saying you were having health issues, that you sometimes forget orders. So we hesitated. You understand?" My blood froze. "What do you mean, health issues? Who called you to say that it was a lady? She said she was a manager, that you were becoming forgetful, that you had gone to the doctor." I left there trembling with anger. I went straight to the bakery. I found her in the office quietly sitting in front of the computer. "Sarah, we need to talk now." She looked up, that innocent little smile on her face. "Hello, Mr. Hubert. What a surprise. I thought you were at home. Why did you call Midwest Flour saying I have health problems?" Her smile faltered just for a second, but I saw it. "Me, Mr. Hubert. I never said that." "Yes, you did. Mr. Harlan told me word for word." She looked surprised. "False to the core. Mr. Hubert, I think there was a misunderstanding. I called. Yes. But it was just to confirm a delivery that was late. Maybe Mr. Harlan misunderstood. He misunderstood that you said I went to the doctor, that I was becoming forgetful. I didn't say that. Mr. Hubert, I swear. Maybe he confused it with something else I said. You know how it is. The phone cuts out sometimes. People mishear. She was good. Very good. She looked me straight in the eye without blinking. Firm voice, hand on her chest. But I wasn't born yesterday. Sarah, don't contact suppliers without telling me first. Is that clear? Of course. Mr. Hubert, sorry if it caused a problem. She left as if nothing had happened. But I stayed there standing in the middle of the office with a certainty burning in my chest. That viper was trying to sabotage me. And it was just the beginning. In the weeks that followed, other problems appeared. Baker's Supply, another longtime supplier, called me to say they had received an email asking to cancel our monthly order. An email sent from the bakery computer, but which I had not sent. An important customer, St. Paul's Academy, which signed a contract with me each year for the spring fair, said they had given up because they had received a cheaper offer from another bakery. When I investigated, I discovered that someone had disclosed our quote with all the details, values, conditions. Guess who had access to the quote, Sarah? I began to pay attention to everything, her every movement, every call, every email. And that's when I began to hear the conversations she had with David. My son came to have lunch with me on Sunday, an old habit we kept. But the atmosphere had changed. He arrived tense, spoke little, looked at his phone all the time. One day during lunch, he put down his fork and looked at me. Dad, we need to talk about the bakery. What is it about the bakery you are, how to say, a bit outdated? The market has changed. The way of selling has changed. And you insist on doing everything the old way. I breathed deeply. David, Silver Loaf has existed for 30 years. It has a good turnover, a loyal clientele. What's outdated about that? Dad, you don't invest in social media. You don't do promotions. You don't have an online store. The competition is overtaking you. I have social media. I have a website. And sales continue to be good. They could be better if you let someone younger make some decisions. Someone like who, me? He looked away. Me and Sarah. We understand the current market better. That's when I understood the snake had put everything in his head. She had made him believe I was a stubborn old man stuck in the past, hindering the company's progress. David, when you understand half of what I understand about management, we'll talk again. For now, I'm still the one making the decisions. He turned red, stood up from the table. You're impossible. You don't accept anyone's opinion. And he left, slamming the door. I was left alone, looking at my half-full plate. My son had changed, and the culprit had a name and a first name. In the months that followed, the pressure increased. David began to talk about partnership. He wanted me to make him a partner in the business, 50% each. Dad, I'm your son, your only son. One day it will be mine anyway. Why not do it now? Because I'm still alive. David, and as long as I have my health and all my faculties, I'm the one who runs Silver Loaf. Don't you trust me? It's not a question of trust. It's a question of common sense. I built this alone. I'm not going to give it all away on a silver platter. He was furious, but he couldn't do anything. That's when Sarah started her smear campaign in the family. She called my cousins, my uncles. Anne cried. She said I was mean to her, that I treated David like a child, that I was selfish, that I didn't want to share anything with anyone. Anne told me. Hubert. Sarah called me yesterday. She was crying, saying you humiliate her at the bakery, that you don't let David grow. Aren't you being a bit hard? I sighed. Anne, you've known me for 68 years. Have I ever been unfair? She remained silent, then mumbled, No, never. Sorry, brother. I should have been suspicious. But other relatives believed her and began to treat me differently, as if I were the villain in the story. And David, he believed every word his wife said. It was in October 2024 that everything really deteriorated. I arrived at the bakery and found David rummaging through the files in the office. Papers scattered, folders open. What are you doing? He jumped. Dad, I was just tidying up. Tidying up what? These are confidential documents. I know, Dad. But I'm your son. I have the right to know. No, you don't have that right. Not as long as you're not a partner. Leave that. He threw the files on the desk. Irritated. You're becoming paranoid. You should see a doctor. That hurt. It hurts when it comes from your son, from the boy you raised, to whom you gave everything, whom you loved more than your own life. And he was treating me like I was crazy. That evening, when I closed the bakery and went home, I cried. I cried a lot. But in the midst of tears, I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for them to play a dirty trick on me. I called my lawyer, Mr. Harrison, and my accountant, Mr. Klein. I set up an appointment for the following week, and I began to prepare my defense plan. Because if there's one thing 35 years of running a bakery taught me, it's that you don't survive in the market by being naive. And if my own son was plotting against me, I was going to protect myself with all the weapons at my disposal. You know that feeling when you realize you're surrounded, that the walls are closing in, and the air becomes more and more difficult to breathe. That's what I felt in September 2024. Mr. Harrison had a small office in downtown Milwaukee on the 4th floor of a somewhat old commercial building. But this man had a legal mind as sharp as a blade. I had known him for 17 years since I needed a lawyer to resolve a contract issue at the bakery. I arrived there on a Wednesday afternoon. Mr. Klein, my accountant, was also present. Tall, bald, thick glasses, but with a keen eye that missed nothing. I sat in the worn leather armchair facing their desk and spilled everything. Every detail. Sarah's calls to suppliers. The documents David was secretly rummaging through. The pressure for me to give up the business. The insinuations that I was becoming senile. Mr. Harrison listened in silence, noting everything on a small blue pad. When I finished, he removed his glasses and looked at me seriously. Mr. Hubert, you are in danger. My stomach knotted. What do you mean they're mounting a siege? First, they discredit you. They spread that you have mental problems, that you're no longer able to manage the business. Then, they'll ask for a guardianship. A guardianship, yes. A legal procedure to remove your civil capacity. They make David your guardian, and he takes control of everything. Your business, your accounts, your property, everything. I felt the floor give way beneath my feet. But there's nothing wrong with my head. I know that. You're lucid in good health. But on paper, with witnesses saying otherwise, with bought medical certificates, it's quite possible to manipulate the situation. Mr. Klein leaned forward. Mr. Hubert, we must act quickly before they take the next step. What do you suggest? Counselor Harrison took a pen. First, you must protect your assets. Transfer the business to a holding company of which you are the sole partner. Remove David from any power of attorney or document to which he has access. Second, document everything. Record conversations. Keep printouts of emails. Everything. Third, prepare an eviction procedure from the house where he lives. But the house is already mine. Yes, it's in your name since its purchase. David lives there, but he is not the owner. If you wish, you can take back the property. I breathed deeply. Do what is necessary. I trust you. In the weeks that followed, we worked in total silence. No one was to know. Not Anne, who had a loose tongue, nor the bakery employees. Mr. Klein created a family holding company, Silver Loaf Holdings LLC, and transferred all the company's assets, the commercial premises, the stocks, the accounts, to this new legal entity. I was the sole partner. Neither David nor Sarah had the slightest participation. Mr. Harrison prepared the power of attorney revocation documents. David had an old power of attorney that I had given him years before, thinking it would be useful. We revoked everything, and I began to document. I bought a small recorder, one of those discreet ones that fit in the palm of your hand. Every time David or Sarah came to talk to me, I recorded. I began to take screenshots of suspicious emails. I kept everything in a hidden folder on the computer. I made backups on a USB drive that I hid in an old coffee can in the pantry of my house. And that's how I got the proof I needed. It was a Friday afternoon, late September. I had closed the bakery earlier. I told the employees I was going to take care of some bank business, but I came back secretly. I entered through the back door very quietly. I heard voices in the office. David and Sarah. I hid in the hallway. Recorder on. Honey, he's not going to give you the business willingly. Sarah's voice was cold, calculating. We have to force things. But how David seemed uncertain. Guardianship. My friend is a lawyer. He says it's possible. We find 2, 3 witnesses who say your father is becoming senile. We get a psychiatric certificate made and voila, you become his guardian. But he's not senile. Sarah, he's fine. David, wake up. Your father is going to die one day, and then you'll wait to inherit when we could have everything now. Silence. Then his voice lower. I don't know. Honey, it seems wrong. What's wrong is that he's selfish like that. You've worked in that bakery all your life. You deserve your share. I haven't worked in the bakery all my life. He's the one who worked. Doesn't matter. You're an only child. It's yours by right. And he refuses you. He humiliates you. Don't you see? Another silence longer. Okay, let's do it. My heart broke at that very moment. My son, my only son, agreeing to betray me, to take everything from me. I left there trembling. I went straight to Mr. Harrison's office. I showed him the recording. He listened to it all. Then he looked at me, his face grave. Mr. Hubert, now we have ammunition. This is evidence of bad faith, of attempted undue appropriation. You can sue them. Not yet, I said, my voice firm despite the pain in my chest. I want to see how far they'll go. I want to be absolutely certain that there's no turning back because deep down, I still had hope. Hope that my son would wake up, that he would realize what he was doing. But in October, that hope died for good. David invited me to dinner, just the 2 of us. He said he needed to talk to me, that it was important. I accepted. Maybe he wanted to apologize. Maybe he had realized his mistake. We went to a simple restaurant near the bakery. We ordered He played nervously with his food. "Dad, I'm worried about you. Worried why you're distracted, confused. Last week, you called the same supplier 4 times asking the same thing. Lies. Blatant lies. David, that never happened." "Yes, Dad. The employees talked about it. They're worried. More lies." "Which employees, Sarah?" "The delivery guys, of course." "Sarah." "Dad, I think you should get examined. See a doctor. It might just be stress, fatigue, but it's good to check." I looked into his eyes. Those eyes I had known since he was a baby. And I saw coldness, calculation. "David, I'm not sick. And if I were, you'd be the first person I'd tell. But I won't see any doctor because I don't need to." He sighed theatrically. "See, Dad, you won't accept help. That's a sign there's a problem." I stood up from the table. "This conversation is over. Dad." "Wait. No. You know what you're doing." "David, and so do I. And I guarantee you one thing. You won't succeed." I left the restaurant, paid my share of the bill at the counter, and left. That night, I called Mr. Harrison. "Prepare everything. I want the documents ready. I want the notifications prepared. I'm just waiting for them to make the next move." And the next move came at Christmas because greed doesn't choose the date, doesn't respect the occasion, has no heart. And on that Christmas Eve when my son kicked me out, he didn't know he had just dug his own grave because I had prepared everything. Every document, every procedure, every piece of evidence. And the next morning, when he thought he had won, I was going to show him what a 68-year-old man who built an empire from nothing is capable of when he is betrayed by his own blood. There are dates that mark our lives forever. Birthday, marriage, birth of a child. But there are also those we would like to erase from memory and can't. For me, December 24th, 2024 is a scar that will never close. I woke up early that day, 6 a.m. The sky still a bit dark, that morning freshness that precedes the heat of the day. I drank my coffee alone as always, toast with jam, black coffee, an apple. I looked at the wrapped gifts in the living room, the blue scooter for Lucas, the right size for his age with gears and everything, the dollhouse for Emma, 4 stories with lights that really turned on, complete furniture, $2,500 in total, but they were worth every penny just to imagine the faces of my grandchildren. I prepared with care. I put on my gray wool shirt, the one David had given me for my birthday 3 years earlier. I put on my silver watch, the only piece of valuable jewelry I owned, inherited from my father. I put on a bit of aftershave. I took one last look in the mirror. A 68-year-old man, white hair and a short cut, wrinkles of someone who has worked hard all his life, but head held high, steady gaze. I took the gifts, put them in the car, and left. David's house was in a suburb in Madison, 4 bedrooms, patio, garage for 2 cars. I had put down the down payment for this house, $80,000. The rest they had financed. But the property was in my name, an important detail that David seemed to have forgotten. I arrived around 7 p.m. There were already other cars in front. I recognized Sarah's mother's car, an old blue Chevy. Her in-laws had been invited. I rang the bell. Emma came to open, all joyful, with her little green dress with a silver bow. "Grandpa." She jumped into my arms. I held that little body smelling of baby lotion and cherry shampoo. My heart tightened. Lucas appeared just behind in jeans and a Packers t-shirt. "Grandpa, did you bring presents?" "Yes, my darling. But you can only open them after dinner." "Okay." He pouted but agreed. I entered the house. The living room was decorated. Christmas tree in the corner full of silver and green decorations. Twinkling lights at the window. Table set with red tablecloth. White napkins. Pine centerpiece. Sarah was in the kitchen. When she saw me, she gave a half smile. "Hello, Mr. Hubert. Sit down. We'll serve soon." I greeted Mrs. Linda and Mr. George. Good. Simple people. They hugged me, treated me with affection. David was on the patio looking at his phone. He looked up when I entered. Nodded. He didn't even come to hug me. Didn't even say hello properly. I immediately felt the heavy atmosphere, but I breathed deeply. It was Christmas, a family holiday. Everything would go well. Dinner was served at 8 p.m. Roast ham, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, salad. Everything was beautiful. Well done. Sarah had made efforts, but the table was silent. Only the children talked, telling things about school, friends. The adults ate slowly, exchanging glances. Mrs. Linda tried to engage in conversation. "And the bakery, Mr. Hubert, how are the year-end sales?" "Good, thank God. December is always a busy month. A lot of holiday parties, corporate events. That's good." She smiled. "You work so hard. You deserve success." Sarah cut a piece of ham forcefully. The knife scraped the plate, making that high-pitched noise. "Yes. He works so hard that he has no time for anything else." I looked at her. "What nothing?" "Mr. Hubert, just a comment." But the tone was acid, venomous. We finished eating. The children ran to the living room, impatient for presents. I helped clear the table, carried the dishes to the kitchen. That's when David appeared behind me. "Dad, come to the office. I need to talk to you." My stomach turned, but I went. The office was small, a oak desk, a leather chair, shelves with files and books, smell of paper and ink. Sarah entered behind me, closed the door. David pulled up a chair and sat in front of the desk. He didn't offer me a seat. I remained standing, clutching my bag to my chest. He opened a drawer, took out a blue folder, placed it on the desk. Open. They were documents, white sheets full of legal text. At the top, in large letters, "Business Property Transfer Deed." My blood boiled. What is this? It's the transfer of Silver Loaf to my name. Everything is ready. All that's missing is your signature. He pushed a pen in my direction. I took the papers, read quickly. Total transfer. No clauses. No conditions. I would give up everything. He would become the absolute owner. David. Are you crazy? No, Dad. I'm sensible. You've worked enough. It's time to rest. And I'm your son. Who else would take care of the business? But why like this? Why now at Christmas? Oh, Sarah stepped forward. Because it has to be now. Hubert, you're aging. You're becoming forgetful. You're no longer able to manage anything. And David is your son. Your only heir. It makes sense to transfer now while you're still alive to see him run the business. I looked at her. This woman I had welcomed, whom I had given a job, whom I had treated like my daughter, and I saw only greed, pure wickedness. I won't sign, I said firmly. Dad, don't be stubborn. It's not stubbornness. David, it's common sense. This business is mine. I built it with my own hands. 35 years of work. You think I'm going to give it away for free just because you asked? It's not free. It's by right. I'm your son. And so does that give you the right to take what is mine? He stood up tall, muscular, looking down at me. Dad, don't make me do this the hard way. What hard way? Guardianship. We start a procedure. We prove that you no longer have all your mental faculties and I become your guardian. Then I transfer everything to my name anyway. So that was it. The ultimate threat. You wouldn't do that. Yes, I would. Sarah crossed her arms. And he will if you continue to be selfish. Selfish. She called me selfish. Me who had given everything to my son, who had sacrificed myself, who had worked until my bones hurt. And they were treating me as selfish because I didn't want to give my work away on a silver platter. No, I said, my voice shaking with anger. I won't sign and I won't let you rob me. David's face hardened. Then get out of here. I blinked. What, you heard me? This house is mine, and if you don't want to cooperate, you no longer have a place here. Take your things and go. My heart raced. I looked at Sarah. She had her arms crossed, a small smile at the corner of her mouth. David, are you serious? Very serious? Sign the papers or get out. Choose. I remained paralyzed. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was my son, my only son, the boy I had raised, clothed, fed, sent to school, paid for his education, bought his first car, helped with his wedding, and he was kicking me out on Christmas Eve. No, I said, my voice shaking. I won't sign. David threw the papers on the desk. Then, get out of here. He came towards me, grabbed me by the arm, and dragged me into the hallway. Sarah followed us, shouting, "Go away, you selfish old man. You only think of yourself. You never thought about your son." I tried to break free, but he was too strong. He pulled me to the front door. The children appeared in the hallway, frightened. Grandpa shouted, "Lucas, shut up." Sarah yelled at him. Emma started crying. David opened the door. The cold night wind hit my face. He pushed me outside. I almost fell on the sidewalk. "And don't come back until you've changed your mind," he said before slamming the door. I stood there alone in the middle of the street with an old suitcase in my hand and my bag of documents hanging from my shoulder. Christmas lights were twinkling in neighboring houses, the distant sound of laughter and music, and me expelled, humiliated, broken. But I didn't cry. Not at that moment, because deep in my chest with the pain, something new was being born. Anger, determination, and the absolute certainty that my son would bitterly regret what he had just done. Have you ever spent a Christmas Eve alone in a cheap motel, hearing the sound of distant celebrations while you feel your heart breaking into pieces? I walked in the street aimlessly for about 30 minutes. The lights of houses twinkling, families gathered, children playing, and me dragging my old suitcase on the sidewalk, feeling the weight of 68 years on my shoulders. I stopped at a street corner, took out my phone, thought of calling Anne. But it was Christmas. She was with her family. I wasn't going to ruin my sister's evening with my problems. I opened the search app, typed nearby motel available now. Several options appeared. I chose the cheapest, Lakeside Inn, $130 a night, 2-star rating, photos showing a small, simple room, double bed, basic bathroom. I called a rideshare. 15 minutes later, I was at the motel door. It was a single-story building, facade painted in faded blue, a small sign with flickering lights, a tiny lobby, worn carpet. smell of smoke and cleaner. The clerk at the desk was in his 30s, tired look, stained shirt. "Good evening. I need a room." He looked at me surprised. It must have been strange to see an elderly man alone asking for a room on Christmas Eve. "Just for you, for how many nights?" I breathed deeply. "One for now." He typed on his old computer, sound of keys echoing in the silence. $130. "Do you pay in cash?" "Yes." I took out the bills from my wallet, hands shaking. He gave me the key. Room 112, end of the hall. I went down the corridor. Each step weighed a ton. Peeling wallpaper, dim lights. I opened the door of the room. It was exactly as in the photos. Small double bed with a worn quilt. Nightstand with a dusty lamp. Tiny bathroom. Window with a thin blind looking onto the parking lot. I closed the door, locked it, leaned against it, and collapsed. I cried as I hadn't cried in years. Sobs that came from deep in the soul. Hot tears flowing down my face, washing away my aftershave. I sat on the edge of the bed. That hard, strange bed which wasn't mine. In a room that smelled of stale air and loneliness. And I thought, how did I get here? How is it that who built a business from nothing, who raised a son alone, who struggled all my life, find myself expelled, humiliated, thrown into the street like garbage by my own son? I took my phone, looked at his photos. Little David, Lucas, newborn in the hospital, swaddled in green cloth. First day of school with a backpack bigger than him. College graduation in a cap and gown. Broad smile. Wedding alongside Sarah. Both radiant. Where had I gone wrong? I had given him everything. Love, education, opportunity, money. I had sacrificed my life for his dreams, and he had repaid me with betrayal. I put away my phone, got up, went to the bathroom, washed my face. The cold water stung my skin. I looked in the foggy mirror. A tired old man looked back at me. Red eyes, deep lines, messy hair. But in that old man's eyes, there was something that wasn't dead. Fighting spirit. I dried my face, went back to the room, took up my phone again. It was 11:45 p.m. I breathed deeply and dialed a number. 3 rings. 4. Hello. The gruff voice of Mr. Harrison. "Mr. Harrison, it's me, Hubert." "Mr. Hubert, is everything all right? It's Christmas Eve. I know. Sorry to call at this hour, but it happened." He kicked me out, made me leave because I wouldn't sign the business transfer papers. Silence on the other end. "Then where are you?" "In a motel. Lakeside Inn alone." "Send me the address." "I'm coming." "That's not necessary." "Mr. Harrison, I don't want to ruin your evening." "Mr. Hubert, send me the address now." I obeyed. 12 minutes later, he was knocking at the door. Mr. Harrison entered the room with a briefcase under his arm. Wrinkled suit, loosened tie, tousled hair, but firm, determined look. "Tell me everything." I told every detail. The dinner, the office, the papers, the threats, the push, the door slamming in my face. He listened, taking notes. When I finished, he closed his notebook. "Mr. Hubert, now we have everything we need. Coercion, attempted undue appropriation, eviction of an elderly person. It's criminal. You can pursue him criminally. I don't want to sue my son." My voice was weak. "Then what do you want?" I breathed deeply. "I want justice. I want him to learn. I want to get my house back, my peace, my dignity." Mr. Harrison leaned forward. Then let's do this. Tomorrow morning, the 25th, I contact the judge on duty. Eviction procedure from the house. You are the owner. It's in your name. He lives there as a gratuitous occupant, and a gratuitous occupant cannot evict the owner. How long will it take with the gravity of the situation, with a 68-year-old man evicted on Christmas Eve? The judge will order an emergency. We'll have a process server there tomorrow itself, around 3 p.m. My heart sped up. Tomorrow, so soon, justice can be slow for many things, but violence against the elderly is a priority. And what they did to you falls into that category. He opened his briefcase, took out other documents. Here also is the notification concerning the revocation of the powers of attorney and a protective measure blocking any movement on his part on the company's accounts. He will not be able to withdraw a cent without your authorization. I looked at these papers. My salvation, my response, my protection. Do everything, counselor. Everything. He smiled, a tired smile, but firm. Everything will be fine. Mr. Hubert, you were intelligent. You protected yourself in advance. Now we are just executing the plan. He left shortly after midnight. He left me alone in that room, but I no longer felt as lost. I lay down on the bed. The mattress was lumpy, the sheets stiff. From outside, I heard distant fireworks. Midnight Christmas. I took my phone, went to the family chat. There were messages. Merry Christmas to all. God bless our family. Cousins sending photos of dinners, hugs, smiles. No message from David, but there was one from Sarah. Merry Christmas. Mr. Hubert, may the new year bring you clarity. Clarity that Viper had the nerve to talk about clarity. I didn't respond. I just turned off my phone, closed my eyes, and for the first time in several hours, I could breathe deeply because I knew one thing they didn't. Tomorrow, when they would think they had won, when they would celebrate their victory, justice would knock on their door. And then my son would discover what it means to mess with a man who has spent all his life fighting, a man who doesn't give up, a man who even on his knees still knows how to get up. I slept little that night, but when the sun rose on December 25th, I was already up. I took a shower, got dressed, put on the same clothes as the day before, and went to meet Mr. Harrison at the courthouse because the war had just begun. And this time I was going to win. There are things in life you never forget. The first kiss, the birth of a child, the day you get something you've dreamed of all your life. For me, December 25th, 2024 entered this list, but not for the reasons you might imagine. I woke up at 6 a.m. The sun wasn't really up yet. The motel was silent. No one was moving in the corridors. All Milwaukee was still asleep after the Christmas celebration. But I couldn't stay still. I took a shower, got dressed, brushed my teeth. Looking in the mirror of that tiny bathroom, and I saw in my eyes a determination I hadn't seen in a long time. 7:30 a.m. Mr. Harrison called me. Mr. Hubert, I've already obtained the judge's order. Eviction granted in emergency. The process server, Mr. Vance, will be at the house at 3 p.m. My heart raced. 3 p.m. Today. The judge considered the gravity of the situation. An elderly person evicted from his own property on Christmas Eve. He didn't hesitate. And David, will he have to leave? He'll have 48 hours to vacate the premises. But the notification arrives today. And there's more. With the eviction, the notification concerning the blocking of the company's accounts, and the revocation of powers of attorney will also arrive. I sat on the edge of the bed. All at once. All at once. It's the cascade effect. Mr. Hubert, when you act at the right moment, with the right evidence, justice acts quickly. I hung up. I sat there processing the information. In a few hours, everything would change. My son was going to discover that he had underestimated his own father. I ate something in a diner near the motel. Eggs and toast, black coffee. I wasn't hungry, but I needed energy. I wandered the streets aimlessly. Milwaukee was quiet. Shops closed. Few cars. The day after Christmas is always like that. Everyone is resting, digesting the holiday meal, enjoying family. Everyone except me. 2:30 p.m. My phone rang. Mr. Harrison, Mr. Hubert, Mr. Vance is on his way. He arrives at the house in 20 minutes. Do you want to go there? I thought. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to see my son's face when he received those papers. But something in me told me no. No. Mr. Harrison, I don't need to be there. Let justice do its work. Are you sure I'm sure? Call me when it's done. I will. I sat on a park bench alone, looking at the bare trees, the gray sky, the passing clouds, and I waited. 3:10 p.m. The phone rang again, but it wasn't Mr. Harrison. It was David. My hand shook. I picked up. Hello, Dad. What have you done? He was shouting. A desperate, frantic voice. I breathed deeply. I protected myself. David. That's all. A process server just arrived here saying I have to leave the house. That the house is yours. The house has always been mine. You knew that. But I live here. My children live here. And I was your father. And you threw me out on the street yesterday. Silence on the other end. Just his heavy breathing. Then Sarah's voice in the background. Call the lawyer. Call now. And David again. Dad, you can't do this. It's Christmas. There are children. You shouldn't have done what you did yesterday either. But you did. Dad, please. David, you have 48 hours to vacate the premises. Read the notification. Everything is explained there. Dad, wait. Don't hang up. But I hung up. My hands were shaking, my heart beating irregularly, but I had no regrets. 2 minutes later, another call. Sarah. I answered. Hubert, are you insane? You can't do this to us. Yes, I can. And I just did. There are children here. You're going to throw your grandchildren out on the street. You threw their grandfather out yesterday. Why couldn't I? She remained without response. Then we'll go to court. We'll have this annulled. Try. But you won't succeed because the house is mine. It always has been. And you lived there by my grace. A favor that ended when you put me out. Cruel old man. We should have had you declared incompetent when we had the chance. And she hung up. I put away my phone. I stayed looking at the horizon. 4 p.m. Mr. Harrison called. Mr. Hubert. Everything is done. Mr. Vance delivered the 3 notifications. Eviction, blocking of the company's accounts, and revocation of powers of attorney. The young man turned pale when he read. The lady panicked. They said they would consult a lawyer. Let them. Yes, but it won't do any good. The documentation is impeccable. You are the legitimate owner. They have no right to the property or the business. And how long before they must leave? 48 hours until the 27th. If they don't leave voluntarily, we'll request an eviction order with police assistance. We hung up. I sat there processing everything. I had done it. I had really fought back. I had defended myself. I had recovered what was mine. But do you know what I felt at that moment? It wasn't joy. It wasn't satisfaction. It was emptiness. Because even though my son had betrayed me, even though he had hurt me, he was still my son. And a father doesn't celebrate when he has to fight against his own blood. I returned to the motel. I spent the rest of the day lying on the bed looking at the ceiling. The phone rang several times. David, Sarah, even Anne, who had somehow found out. I didn't answer anyone. I just wanted silence. In the evening, I ordered food via an app, a simple burger. I ate without appetite just to not be sick. And I thought, what now? I had recovered my house, protected my business, taught my son a lesson. But what came next? Would he learn, or would he hate me forever? And the grandchildren? How would my relationship with them be? These questions kept me from sleeping. But one thing I knew with certainty, I wouldn't go back. Because if there's one thing 68 years of life taught me, it's that you can't let others trample on you, even when those others are your own family. Early on the morning of the 26th, the phone rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Hello, Mr. Hubert. This is Jessica. We met at a trade fair last year. Do you remember Jessica? Woman in her 40s, competent, serious. She worked in an operations company. Yes, I remember. Hello, Jessica. Is everything all right? Yes. Listen, I heard that you had some issues in your business. Well, I'm looking to change fields. I wanted to know if you might need someone to help manage Silver Loaf. I remained silent, thinking. A manager. Exactly what I needed. Jessica, it's possible. Can we discuss this in more detail? Of course, whenever you want. We set up an appointment for coffee that afternoon. And that's how, in the midst of chaos, I began to rebuild, because life doesn't wait for us to fully recover, to move forward. Life continues, and we continue with it, or we stay behind. And I had no intention whatsoever of staying behind. If you've enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to Revenge with Thomas for more real-life stories about standing up for yourself. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to deal with family betrayal, don't forget to like the video if you think what I did was justified. Stay strong, and never let anyone walk all over you, even if it's family.